You're listening to the Author Inside You podcast, a weekly podcast designed to motivate you to finish writing a book, choose a publisher, and build an audience. Keep listening if you're looking to get propelled into the next chapter of your life. And now, it's the Author Inside You podcast.
Hello, I'm Matt Rafferty.
And I'm Leah Rafferty.
A special thanks to you for listening to our podcast and helping us spread the word. It's working, and more people are listening to the Author Inside You.
And also, thank you to our listeners, Neil, Helen, and David, who specifically asked if we could do a few interviews with people who work in the book publishing business, such as agents, bookstore owners, and independent publishers.
Well, this episode begins our mini-series, Inside the Book Industry. Today, our guest is Lucinda Halpern, president of Lucinda Literary, a consulting agency dedicated to representing and publicizing authors with specific expertise in new media. Welcome, Lucinda. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, Lucinda, I see that you worked for HarperCollins and Scholastic magazines. How did these experiences lead you to become an entrepreneur?
So I'd always been interested in working with authors and working in books. Like so many people who enter publishing, I was an aspiring author and creative writer. And I had to get my foot in the door somehow, right? It's a small world, an inner circle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took the job that was offered to me, which was a publicity assistant at HarperCollins. And I parlayed that when I left into a marketing role at Scholastic. And in those days, which was now about 15 years ago, online was really just sort of burgeoning for authors. So online marketing, newsletters, websites, the blogosphere, the Twittersphere. And so I had to just jump in and learn very quickly.
An exciting time, I would think also.
It was an exciting time. And then I thought, how can I marry these new skills with my deep passion of nurturing the careers of authors and being editorially involved from the ground floor up? So I thought, there has to be a job that does this, right? And there was. It was becoming a literary agent. The problem was I had no list. I had no revenue to guarantee any New York literary agency. So I knocked on every door and I found the person who would take me on as sort of an unknown and give me letterhead and give me a desk and let me make phone calls and use the agency name. And I'm forever indebted to my boss who allowed me to do that. And through working at that agency, I worked with Gretchen Rubin of The Happiness Project and a number of other of their marquee authors. And I started my agency when I was 27 years old.
Wow.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. It's been a wonderful experience. We're now in our 11th year, and we've been innovating all along the way, trying to service our authors in the best way possible. So it's been a really rewarding experience.
Well, congratulations. First off,
thank
just
you.
having a business and having it succeed for 11 years is wonderful. And then also as a woman, woohoo, that's just wonderful. So
thank you.
Very good to hear.
Well, I think the big question that our fan base is probably wondering is, how do I get connected to an agent?
So, as I said, it's a tightly knit world, and it does often take an insider connection. So what I always recommend is find the person you know who is a published author. And it doesn't matter if you are writing fiction and the person you know has published a memoir. Can you get any connection to a publishing insider, agent, or editor, and have that person give you something of a plan? So I'm more personally a fan of that networking than I am going to the internet and sort of Googling how to get an agent and looking at all kinds of resources that exist, often with conflicting wisdom.
Right.
So, that's always the first way to go. But if you don't have access to that network, a great idea, whether you're a fiction or a nonfiction writer, is to establish any kind of audience online. And that could be from, a social media audience to writing an article that gets picked up in Forbes or in Refinery or in Huffington Post or, like pie in the sky New York Times. because agents and publishers are looking at the media constantly, and we're looking for new voices, and we're looking for exciting stories, and we're looking for a fresh point of view. And so if your story gets traction in the media, you've now, elevated your chances of getting published. So, those are a couple of ways. Of course, there used to be in-person conferences to attend, and I think those will start up again soon. So there are a number of ways, but I'd say I'd almost try those three before going about blind querying agents that you find on querytracker.net.
So I think those are three good things. Go out and find somebody who's done it before, and then try to get some traction online and go to in-person events. I think those are all great ideas.
And I'll give a fourth resource, which is Publishers Marketplace, is the industry database. So we all use that to find. It offers direct contacts to emails that you might be interested in connecting with, to editors, to publishers, to scouts. And, it's a paid subscription, but it's a nominal fee. It gives you a free daily newsletter that you can see what is selling in the marketplace. You can write that agent that day and say, I saw you sold XYZ, and I'm actually writing a novel that reminds me a lot of, of something on your list that I've read. So you can make those more personal, tailored introductions that can go such a long way.
And the agents will respond back?
Well, you're talking to a different kind of agent, right? At Lucinda Literary, we pride ourselves on being responsive and, sort of guiding writers through this process. And we've developed a whole sort of coaching and course offering around that. So it isn't every agent that's going to respond, but having a number of agent friends, I can tell you that when they get the letter that says, Dear David, I saw that you represent Peter Heller's The Dog Stars, and this book changed my life, and so I'm reaching out to you because, that agent will read the query letter. It will get to that person, and it will be meaningful, and, it just enhances your opportunities for response and success.
Well, speaking of query letters, what sort of mistakes do people do when they write a query letter?
So I'm smiling because this is one of my favorite questions. And again, because I think there is so much bad wisdom out there. And so, we have a few sort of myth-busting insights to give on this topic. And one is that we care who you are. We care who you are as an author. So don't start with, dear so-and-so, my book is. It's like, I want to know who you are, sort of the inspiration for your writing this, which is usually about the audience that supports it, fiction or non. So to use a fiction example, if you've written a popular story, whether it's a short story or whether it's won an award or whether it's for a major media platform, and you say that you've had response and engagement around this, now you've told me why I should get interested in what you're about to present. So the first thing for us is we want a sense of who you are. So the second is hiding information. So if you've self-published before, or if you are working with an agent currently, or you've published, traditionally before, these are facts that we want to know, because the first thing that any agent or editor is going to do upon receiving a submission they're actually interested in is Google you. And so if you're hiding really pertinent information to your submission, like the fact that you've already published a book, then it's kind of a red flag, right? Or if you're working with an agent who's a close friend of mine and you didn't tell me that you have representation. So again, these are delicate topics, and I completely get where writers are coming from and not wanting to sort of, a lot of writers, they cower about writing an agent to say, I self-published this book, but my sales were really pitiful. So instead, take a positive spin. I've self-published this book, but this new idea is poised to do, very differently, because here's sort of the marketing plan I have for it, or the idea is really timely, or I didn't have support for my first book, but I plan to find a traditional publisher for this. Whatever your reason is, don't exclude the information. Find a way to offer it a positive spin.
So let's say I have my fiction book and I send it off to you. What happens after I send it into your agency?
Sure. So every agency, this is also confusing for writers, but every agency has particular and specific and different guidelines.
Okay.
So it's for our agency, we're not looking at your entire book upon your submission through our query portal, right? We're looking at a synopsis, we're looking at a partial, so just a few chapters,
Mm-hmm.
or a book proposal. So once you've hooked us with your letter and or that early material, then it's usually going through a series of gatekeepers before it's actually getting to an agent. So
Okay.
at Lucinda Literary, we have interns, we have assistants, and then we have agents who, it has to pass through all of those different doors to get someone's attention. And you can imagine at even bigger agencies, you have to get through even more people. All the more reason why that letter is just so hugely important, and something I always guide writers to do is to express as much urgency as possible in that letter. And I get that can be tough, right? Like, you don't want to write an write an agent and say, "I expect you to call me tomorrow."
Yeah.
But there are ways to suggest that you've got a really hot, timely concept that is in demand. And some of the best ways to do that are to suggest that it's out with a small list of agents that are eagerly reviewing the material. You've already had requests. A publisher has contacted you. There are ways to sort of hint at that urgency that would make someone want to pick up your submission before someone else's.
I noticed on your website that you have closed looking for an intern for this year. So
Mm-hmm.
I would think, since the interns get to see the letters before anyone else, what an exciting job for them.
Yeah.
So you really have to
Yes.
be careful who you pick also, though. They have to kind of think like you.
True. That's true. And we try to mentor them to think just as we do, and to really study our lists, and to understand how we communicate and take pride in our communications with writers. So yes, they do have to think like you. But I mean, it's another great hack. If I understood on the writer's side that I was going to first be reaching an intern, I might actually research that intern a little bit and make the note more personal, and make it more exciting to that young person who's first reviewing the query.
Sure.
So again, I think those personal touches and details tend to really matter when you're competing with so many other blind submissions.
That's
Interesting.
Great advice.
So let's just follow this through a little bit. An intern reads the letter and maybe the submission that came with it, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Either a synopsis or maybe a chapter.
mm-hmm.
And then they're excited about it. And then they pass it on to the next level. And that person, do they read the entire chapter if there's a chapter included?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. They're running it up the flagpole. So, again, something that if we get something that seems right up our alley now in the world of working from home and using all of these digital systems, right? It wouldn't be uncommon for someone in my office to Slack me and say, "We just received a really exciting query from XYZ. I'm going to email it to you right now." Well, now you have my attention,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Sure.
So in ways, things are moving. Actually, I can't speak for other agencies or publishers. I don't actually have the sense that this is happening across the board. But at our agency, things are moving faster than ever.
Wow.
So, so just to take you through the process, someone, more junior might read it, might recommend it. Then I'm looking at it, usually nights and weekends, not during office hours. And then I'm getting in touch with the author to set a call to discuss the material, to share my vision of how, I see the book appealing commercially, and maybe any editorial changes that I'd suggest. And then seeing if I have chemistry with that author, because we very much view this as a lifelong marriage, and we view a book as nothing short of having a baby. So I know what a precious relationship this is, and I know how important books are, and you're getting into a deep and engaged relationship with someone. So the next step upon reading the material is really talking to the author and making sure that you share a vision.
I never thought about that. Yes, I guess you would. That, like how you said, a marriage and the baby.
Yes.
It is a deep relationship. You're right. Yeah, I can see that now. So thank you for explaining that.
Well, sure. You both have vested interest in it succeeding.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
One of our listeners wrote in
Mm.
and asked a question. David asked, what types of book deals are usually only negotiated by agents and not authors?
Definitely deals that are done with the big five houses.
Mm-hmm.
But as I'm sure you know and your listeners know, there are a number of really reputable and wonderful independents that also also offer very sizable book deals. You want an agent. I'm always going to be an advocate for the value that an agent lends to the equation, which I think goes so much more, beyond the deal and the commission. I think it's about the lifetime advocacy for not the product but the author,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that those interests are being served. So to get specific about your listener's question, there are publishers that will take a query unsolicited from an author, but if that author then enters into a publishing contract, I recommend that author gets an attorney. If they're not going to engage an agent, they should absolutely engage a lawyer to review the contract.
Sure,
Great.
that makes sense. Sure.
Yeah. But any of the major publishers or independent houses are going to sort of require that an agent be involved, or they're certainly going to prioritize looking at those submissions that come from agents they trust. So it's never a bad thing for an author to work with an agent. It's generally always going to elevate your potential advance as well as your career.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's interesting because it sounds like you just circled right back to it's a small world about how you
Mm-hmm.
said that they want to work with the agent they know or
Yes.
trust.
Yes. Yes. It is so true. And I actually had that question asked the other day that I thought was an interesting one. How do you avoid the conflict of having these publisher relationships, but primarily working for the author? How do you navigate that? And what it comes down to is, ideally you're engaging in an agent who's fair-minded and invested in the book's success. So you are mediating between those different interests toward the same goal. But ultimately, even if there's conflict along the road of publishing, which there can be because it's a long, winding process,
Sure.
publishers are still going to be inclined to work with agents time and time again for their tastes, for first and foremost. If they trust
Okay.
that you're bringing them good material, they're going to keep working with you. Yeah, I mean, it takes time to build these relationships, but once you have them, we care for them. We care for them deeply.
Right.
Great.
You don't want to offer something that's not
Right.
worthy, right? Because that doesn't
Right.
help your reputation any. So
Exactly.
you want a good product to be able to give, and you want to help the author come up with more good products after they
That's
get that
exactly
one
right.
successful. Right.
Does the agent help with the cover of the book in the printing?
An agent is there to really guide and strategize on all of those milestones in the process. So, what we usually recommend, a publisher will send some cover options for the book. The author will sort of hold his or her breath. Oh my goodness, the moment has arrived, and it rarely is something that they actually envisioned,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be both good or bad. And that's when an agent gets involved and gets on the phone with the author and says, let's talk about this, and how did this depart from your vision, and then coming back to the publisher in unison to say, here's what we think, here are the tweaks, here's how we'd pivot. That's where an agent would be involved. So it's not that an agent is coming up with the cover art inspiration. It's more that an agent is an important part of that title, and packaging conversation.
Okay, kind of like a negotiator if need be.
Exactly. All along the path. Yes.
Okay. It's interesting.
So let's talk about time frame. What kind of a time frame are we talking about from the time that you might receive the first query letter until this lucky author is able to hold their book in their hand?
If a novel comes to us and it's really fairly baked, and we're just suggesting minimal editorial revisions, and then we're sending it to an editor, and that editor has minimal revisions, it could be a year or less that you see that out on shelves. So that's for the novel that
Wow, that's
comes.
pretty quick. Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking of a book that this is actually a wonderful success story I love to talk about. A self-published author wrote a book called Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, and just through her own efforts on Instagram, started meeting with book clubs. She did like 50 book club appearances during the pandemic.
Wow.
So by the time she approached me, she'd had a number of reviews, she'd had these appearances, she could demonstrate that proof of concept and that sort of proof of hunger from her audience for this book series. So we went and sold it within 2 weeks to HarperCollins for a 4-book deal. And
Wow.
I'm so psyched for her because she was envisioning self-publishing for, the rest of her road. But then, I always thought this had potential for a major house, and now they're publishing that book at this fall. So that really is a matter of 9 months less that we are getting that out to market. But again, the key there being that the editorial product was pretty much there, when we sold it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about nonfiction, it could be, 2.5 years from the time you take a proposal to an agent and get it out on shelves. It could be longer if you don't get an agent's buy-in right away.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a long road, but I think authors are always surprised at how fast it actually feels when they're in the process.
And the final feeling of being able to hold your book and look at it and say that it's yours.
I know. And there's nothing like that,
Right. So what's your biggest frustration about being an agent?
I'll tell you, it's authors who don't have a clear vision of what they want their book to be. I love working with authors who are open-minded and collaborative. I think that goes a long way in this process. But if you just sort of want to publish a book for the sake of it, but you haven't really thought through who your reader is, why that person cares, why they would make that $28 investment, then I can't really help you with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like you have to have that undying, unwavering belief in your art and your craft, in your vision. And I think that makes things easier along the way, because when you start working with a large team, as you will do, the agent being your first team member, but then it becomes your editor, your art designer, your publicist, and everyone else. They're going to be looking to you as the expert on your book and your audience. And so I just think you have to be very clear about your reasons for publishing. It's too tough of a business otherwise.
Sure. You need to know your audience.
Yeah. So when you ask what's the frustration, it's sometimes being in kind of a dance with a prospective writer or a client about, we're still figuring out what this is, and that's not where I like to be. I like to be working with someone who knows exactly what this is going to be.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What was it like working on the Happiness Project?
I mean, it was really exciting. I always say that I'm indebted to Gretchen and to her agent and to her, the team of people that I was on, for all of the learning and the energy and the excitement that came. I mean, I'll never forget when that hit the New York Times bestseller list and we all had champagne at the office at 11 at night. It was exciting because what she was doing was so revolutionary at the time, using her blog as a mechanism to really understand her readers and engage with them. It just was so new at the time. And so I just think all of it was exciting. And it was also, I was very young in publishing, so to be part of that. I was also part of Freakonomics. I
Wow.
worked on the
Yeah.
so I started I was basically just in the mailroom mailing books for interview request after interview request. But I got to know the authors. I got to be a part of that success, and so it never gets old. It never gets old when a book reaches that kind of a level of recognition and being a part of the team and the process.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And now those books are part of school,
Curriculums.
curriculums. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm indebted to those authors, more than they are to me. Definitely. I mean, they were the driving force behind their own success, and I just got to learn and be part of it.
That's wonderful.
So we like to ask authors what their advice is for other people who are writing books about getting their book done or being able to complete it. So I thought it'd be interesting to ask you, what's your best advice for someone who's writing a book right now?
I guess I'll give you my general broad advice would be you keep on a schedule. My most successful authors are definitely have a rigorous kind of discipline to their work. So if they are unable to have a daily writing practice, they're taking they're taking a month-long writer's retreat or week-long writer retreat or a weekend, whatever time they can allot to really focus and drill down on it. I also am just a huge believer in having a good team. So if you don't have an agent who can be your accountability partner, who can work with you on developing the idea, then can you join a workshop with other writers? Can you be part of a Facebook group or a community? Again, to have that accountability, to have deadlines, to have people supporting your progress. I think those are the best things you can do. And I just read Adam Grant's Think Again, the value of having a team of skeptics, of actually not having your mother be your first reader, but having your most skeptical, trusted friend give you the brutal feedback on your letter, on your book proposal, on your first chapter. Like, what are the problems with this? Asking those tough questions is going to serve you because the book buying audience is a skeptical one.
You need people to tell you the truth. How else are you going to get better? And you can't take
Yes.
anything personal. If you want to succeed, you need to take criticism and learn from it and know that it's given to you to help you succeed.
Definitely.
Yeah, but some
Definitely.
people do have problems with that. Yeah.
Right. Well, it's interesting. We started off with talking about who you know in your community, and then we kind of are wrapping up with who you know in your community and having your community help you. So it's really about talking to people and getting to know people and asking for favors.
Yes, it is. It is. It's an interesting balance of, working in the proverbial ivory tower at your craft and getting out to a network of people you trust to give you, tough love and brutal honesty.
Lucinda, what's the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you?
So, you can find everything that Lucinda Literary offers on our website, which is www.lucindaliterary.com. And I think I think your audience will find a number of resources. They can certainly query our agents there. As I said, we have courses, we have regular workshops, we have a speakers bureau, we have all kinds of things to check out. So I hope to see your listeners there.
When I was checking out your website, it does seem like you have many resources that are very valuable and that people can take advantage of.
Yes, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for putting it out there. And once again, congratulations on being a successful businesswoman.
Oh, thank you. It's wonderful to talk with you guys.
I think it was interesting to have Lucinda as an agent give us her perspective on the writing process. So keep those suggestions coming.
And until next time,
write on.
Thank you for listening to the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.
This episode is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at theauthorinside.you.com/freebook. Choose from over 180,000 titles. Go to theauthorinside.you.com/freebook.